How has the solar business changed, let's say, in the past 12 to 18 months?
I would say now probably almost 70 to 80% of the projects we do involve a battery. So the market is shifting towards energy storage.
And now we have such a high attachment rate and so many battery installs that we really had to train the solar electrician on the PV crew to be able to install batteries themselves.
If you were a brand new solar company, or if you had an opportunity to advise somebody who was brand new to the solar installation business, what advice would you give to them? Where to start now? Welcome to the Streamlining Installation Processes for Solar Success panel. My name is Joe Ordia from the Solar Surge YouTube channel. And a lot of what we've been doing recently is meeting with different solar installers across the country to figure out how they're finding success, how they're remaining competitive in today's much, much more challenging solar environment. But I guess before we dive into the conversation, for my fellow panelists, if you wouldn't mind just briefly introducing yourself, tell us a little bit about your company and how you got started in the solar industry, please.
Hey everybody, my name is Chris Sparadeo. I started my career in solar in 2011 when I moved to the Caribbean coast of Nicaragua and started work for an NGO doing remote electrification for very isolated communities of Afro-descendant indigenous cultures. And I worked down there for like 4.5 years. I got addicted to energy storage and rural electrification. So then I moved back to my hometown of Randolph, Vermont, and hooked up with Catamount Solar, which is a member-owned cooperative. I kind of climbed up the rungs as an installer, eventually became a licensed electrician. Now I'm a master electrician, and I hold a few NABCEP certifications. I'm currently the director of energy storage. I oversee from sales to service of all battery-based installations that we do at Catamount. So I am a hardcore installer and solar nerd.
Excellent. Thanks, Chris.
That's tough to follow. I'm Nora Lardner. I am currently the market opening manager at ConnectDER. We are a meter socket adapter company that makes meter socket adapters for DERs. I got my start in solar about 10 years ago, worked my way up in residential solar as well, kind of through every department. So I was an operations director at Venture before coming over here to ConnectDER. And yeah, work with all of these lovely people in the back. So just want to shout out my company for coming since we are locally based here in Philly.
Great, welcome.
And my name is Joe Marhamati. I'm one of the co-founders of Sunvoy, which is a white label customer portal for solar installers, and started a solar installation business in Washington, D.C. area in Northern Virginia called Ipsen Solar in 2016, and spent about 10 years at the Department of Energy before that. This is one of my favorite subjects, and I'm a big fan of Solar Surge, so I'm happy to be here with Joe and fellow panelists.
Great to have you here, Joe. And for those, a little bit of background on me too. Before I started anything on YouTube, I was a solar installer as well. So I had one of the top 5 solar install companies in Virginia, and still carry an electrician's license in the North and South Carolina markets. So coming from that background. So folks, again, we're talking about how solar companies are finding success in today's environment, but I guess let's start with kind of a recap. How has the solar business changed, let's say in the past 12 to 18 months? How have things changed today where we were, let's say, a year and a half ago? Chris, if you wouldn't mind starting out.
So I would say maybe I'm a little biased. I love batteries, I love energy storage, but luckily the market is kind of following that trend as well. Maybe 3-4 years ago, Catamount, we do have an off-grid battery-based section, but for the most part, the majority of our work was just regular commercial grid-tied residential PV systems. I would say now probably almost 70 to 80% of the projects we do involve a battery. So the market is shifting towards energy storage for a few reasons. Net metering, it still is a thing in Vermont, but it's becoming less incentivized. So energy storage couples nicely with kind of de-incentivized rates of net metering.
Absolutely. How about you, Nora?
Yeah, so working nationally with installers all over the country, everybody is seeing different challenges. Storage is huge, especially in more mature markets. What we do at ConnectDER is really simplify the process so that in our approved markets, installers could standardize with an MSA for their simple solar installations. And that's where our kind of place is in the market and where our customers are seeing success.
Well, I remember when we started our business in 2016, we were just doing solar. And then it was battery storage and EV chargers and circuit level consumption and load control and now smart main service panels. So going from offering one thing to offering 6 different things, you need to have people like Chris who know how to install and commission all of these different parts and pieces. So that's something that's really come to a head in the last 12 to 18 months is having so many different products that you really need a training center within your business so that your electricians know how to install and commission all these systems. And what we do at Sunvoy is also present one unified way for homeowners to see all this energy data in one place. So that at PTO, you're not giving your homeowners 6 different apps that are all based on what the manufacturer wants you to see. So that's really one of the biggest trends I've noticed in the last 12 to 18 months.
Great. Well, we definitely see that solar with battery storage, or the marrying of solar with battery storage, is now becoming more mainstream. I was an old school battery guy for the last 12, 13 years, and it was a very, very small part of the solar community that was even doing batteries. Most of the high volume installers were frankly just focused on just getting as much glass on the roof as possible, churning through projects as fast as possible to maximize profits. When you talk about adding batteries into the mix, you are adding now significant complexity into the process, from the design, the permitting, all the way through the install, and then of course the post-install fleet maintenance. So Chris, maybe I'll kick it back over to you, since you have a lot of experience in doing solar and battery storage systems. What are some of the things that you had to change in terms of your internal processes and procedures to handle the complexity that battery storage introduces with your solar project?
So I think luckily for us, Catamount Solar, we had a leg up in the game. We have always had an off-grid division. It was very small back in the day. We were doing 12-volt lead acid systems. That's again where I got my start in solar with small lead acid battery-based systems. So we had the leg up and kind of knew the functionality of how all of this kind of works together. But right now it's a huge part of what we do in our company, and we're just needing to train people to make sure that we have adequate skilled installers. If that knowledge resides in 1 or 2 people, that's not a sufficient business model. So spreading that knowledge throughout the company is an important part.
I can go. For us, our flagship product has been our solar adapter, which we've been deploying across the country for 10 years now. But based on market feedback, we are actually currently developing our islanding product, and we expect that to be available in the market by the beginning of 2025. So we do listen to our installers like you guys.
Great. Joe, your take on it.
Well, when we started doing batteries, we really had a battery crew. And now we have such a high attachment rate and so many battery installs that we really had to train the solar electrician on the PV crew to be able to install batteries themselves. So that dedicated battery crew was just not enough. So getting to train all of those PV technicians to be able to install batteries is a big lift. It's a lot of work. It takes many years of training in QA, QC. And of course, there are a lot of different batteries out there. So we're installing the Powerwall, the Franklin battery, we're installing the Enphase battery. We've been through V1 of Enphase and V2 of Enphase. So that's even more training. Now you bring in the load control, you bring in the smart main service panels. You need your PV crews to be able to install all of it. And that takes many years. Now, of course, you also don't want your homeowner to have to look at all these different apps too. So what we've done at Sunvoy is we've brought in, to my knowledge, the first and only native Tesla integration. So the homeowner can actually see their Tesla Powerwall data within the app of the solar installer. So they don't have to log into Enphase for their solar production or Tesla for their battery data, just kind of unifying it all in one place.
Great. Well, you touched on the importance of proper training and not allowing a lot of that expertise to only reside in one person's mind, but making sure that it spreads throughout the organization. I know that's one of the problems that we had when I was in the install business. Is we had a battery crew, and we had one gentleman in particular who was on that crew. He was the expert, right? And he knew his stuff. But the problem is we didn't have everybody else trained up at that level. And of course, as you scale up, that begins to become a challenge because now you're pulling your best guy from one job to the next, and he can't focus on initiating new projects. One of the things we haven't touched on yet, of course, is how the financial conditions in our market have changed over the last year. As you all know, we're dealing with a higher interest rate environment, higher dealer fees. I'd like to ask you, Chris, how have you adjusted in your business in terms of your sales process, maybe your pricing, or how are you adjusted to today's financial environment compared to where we were 12 or 18 months ago?
I think for us, we're pretty lucky, especially in the off-grid world. Like people that live on top of a mountain that don't have access to electricity are probably going to need a backup system regardless of what the market trends are. So I guess that's lucky for us. But yeah, things are definitely changing pretty quickly, right? So luckily battery prices are coming down. It looks like the solar coaster of PV module prices are kind of plummeting as well. So that's been good, especially because net metering is essentially going away in Vermont as well. So like the fact that we can offer something at a lower price helps that ROI stay kind of where it had been.
Nora, your take on the current financial conditions. How have you had to adapt your business?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's actually what our business does, is standardizes the installations. And with nearly 25% of homes needing, having an undersized service or needing a main service panel upgrade, our adapters, negate that. So it keeps the overall cost down for homeowners and just allows more solar on the grid in our approved markets, of course.
Yeah, I'd say you need to get really creative with your financing methods. If you're not using a credit union today, start looking at credit unions that are offering lower interest rates relative to some of the private fintechs. Look at third-party ownership. So there's a lot of PPAs and leases out there now that you can offer to your homeowners that you might not have had to look at before, but not everybody can pay 10.99% interest or has the cash right now. So being flexible and offering a PPA or a lease is something that's necessary for just about every solar installer, in my opinion. And just differentiating yourself, having a white labeled app for your business so that your homeowners can track their projects, see all their energy data in one place, see their project documents and their photos, be able to submit service tickets and provide reviews and referrals. To me, that's what distinguishes a quality vertically integrated company from a company that's not able to weather the storm.
Makes a lot of sense, Joe. I appreciate that. One of the things that I think probably all of us can appreciate is that there are people out there, Chris, particularly in your market, there are people out there that are highly motivated to acquire solar and storage technology, whether for philosophical reasons or just for emergency preparedness reasons or whatever it is. These people are they're going to buy solar from someone, right? They just want to make sure that they're going to get it right, and they're going to get the service that they need, and that they've got that peace of mind. I know so much of our industry, especially over the past 5 years or so, has gone to this model where it's kind of a Salesforce-led model where maybe somebody wasn't even researching solar, but a salesperson approached them, convinced them that solar was a good investment, and then put a package together for them. I think what we're seeing now is returning more to a consumer-led buying process, more of a technical sale where you're selling solar, or perhaps you're selling solar with storage, with EV charging capability as well. If you were a brand new solar company, or if you had an opportunity to advise somebody who was brand new to the solar installation business, what advice would you give to them? Where to start now?
So I think Catamount's a little unique in the fact that we're a member-owned cooperative. So essentially, 95% of our employees are also owners of the company. That distinguishes us from other companies in the sense that we pride ourselves in efficient, effective, but more importantly, quality installations. The integrity of our work speaks for itself, and that, as a business model, can stand alone. Just like a quality installation is ultimately in the customer's best interest and in our industry's best interest. If we're having fly-by-night solar companies come in and do a ramshackle job, that's just a black eye in our industry, and we don't need that right now. So for us to distinguish ourselves as kind of the expert in our field, people that are highly qualified, highly trained, doing good work, that has helped us tremendously. Maybe we'll lose a customer because our price was higher than our competitor, but they'll likely come back either for service needs or another installation because we have a good track record in our community.
Yeah, I 100% agree with everything Chris said. Being in the industry for as long as all of us have, we've seen companies come in and sell and not exist anymore. Service is going to be very important, as well as just training and knowing everything that you can about the industry and electrification overall, especially since homes that are getting solar are 3 times more likely to have other ads as well, like EV storage. So just stay informed, know all of the technology, and continue to train your crews.
Yeah, I would agree with Chris. The strongest companies I've ever come across are the worker-owned cooperatives, the companies that are vertical, and the companies that don't grow too quickly. So I think my advice would be, don't be afraid to grow slow, do things the right way the first time, because if you go too fast, you're going to run into issues of growth. And then have equity to the greatest extent that you can for everybody in the company. Have a sense of ownership, whether literally or figuratively, because the wisest words I ever heard in the solar industry were solar is a team sport. It requires every single person in the company to be aligned toward one mission and one trajectory. And I think staying verticalized, staying small, slow growth, and having a sense of equity for everyone in the company would be my advice.
That's excellent. Yeah, and that's consistent with what I've been seeing. And I've been meeting with installers from all over the country, particularly in California. As you all know, we haven't been directly affected by it yet here in the East Coast, but California just lost its one-for-one net metering. And so the companies that were out there that relied on very much that financial sale, like, hey, here's how much we're going to lower your bill by switching to solar. A lot of that doesn't really exist anymore unless you can successfully incorporate storage into the equation. But what I'm seeing is a lot of the high volume solar installers were not able to make that transition successfully. And so they've just left the market altogether, or they've gone out of business. But what I have seen is smaller regional installers that didn't grow too fast. They focused on having good reputation, good referrals and reviews within their area, and they just didn't try to be everything to everybody. Those are companies that are actually growing and gaining market share in today's environment. So Joe, maybe I'll throw this one back to you first, because I know so much of what you do is help companies get referral business, right? Which is really, I think, what we all want in the install business, is to have a reputation that attracts referral business. Why is that so important now in today's market, as we're seeing, tighter financial conditions and more increased complexity on the installs?
Well, for anyone here who's been in the solar business who tracks their cost of acquisition, you know that the cost of acquisition for a referral is about a tenth of what it is for any other lead source. So becoming a referral-based business as quickly as you can, even if it takes a few years, is the holy grail of being in the solar industry. And I think part of the reason that cost of acquisition has been so persistently high for so long is that solar installers, when they sign somebody up for solar, that homeowner doesn't necessarily have visibility into the process. They don't know what stage their project is at. They don't know how long the project's going to take. They don't know when PTO is coming. And then when they do get to PTO, we're giving them 4 or 5 different apps from the manufacturer that have no relationship whatsoever to the installer. I've actually talked to folks at conferences like this who have solar on their home who don't remember who installed their system. They thought SMA installed their system. And I said, no, I don't think SMA installed your system. So I think that's the main reason why the cost of acquisition is so high and why referrals have become so hard to come across, because the installer has not owned that relationship. And that's what we're trying to change at Sunvoy.
Chris, your take on it?
I would agree with Joe that just having a credible messenger is the best way to get across to a customer. Kind of the slimy salesman pitch doesn't always work, and specifically in Vermont, which is like a pretty tight-knit area, word of mouth and a good reputation is hands down the most important thing.
Yeah, so with a unique technology that's unfamiliar to installers like we have, as we continue to expand into new regions, what I find is that referrals and other install feedback from installers we've worked with in places like Vermont are our best way to expand into any new market that we go into.
Great. And in terms of new opportunities, where do you all see that, where do you see the best opportunities for growth now going forward?
I don't think we're there yet, but the North Star of what I'm seeing is electric vehicles, energy storage systems, smart consumption inside the house, and PV all being under one very tight-knit umbrella. We're heading there, and we're taking slow steps to make sure we're methodical about that. It's not like a today or tomorrow thing. It's like a probably in the next 2 years, hopefully, type thing. But that's really where I see the industry moving, is whole home energy automation, seamless. Currently, it's clunky at best. So,
Great. Nora, where do you see the best opportunities looking forward?
Same thing, just standardizing wherever you can. You know, exactly what Chris said. We're not there yet, but taking any steps we can to get there and to continue to be adaptable. All of us know that the industry has changed so much, and it does every year after year. So just to continue to be able to grow with it as we make these changes.
Yeah, I would say for every dollar that you've sold in solar revenue, there's at least $2 sitting on the table right now in battery storage for somebody that's only got solar, for a SPAN main service panel, for load control, for an EV charger, for circuit level consumption. So getting to the customers that are already in your solar fleet and selling them on the next greatest technology is a hugely untapped market. And one of the things that most excites me about what we're working on is we're adding an e-shop to these branded apps at Sunvoy later this year, so that for every single solar customer that you've got, they can go into your app and they can add a battery, they can add a service plan, they can add Squirrel Guard, they can add any other number of products, because there are millions of dollars of revenue sitting within your existing customer base. And I think that is a big opportunity.
That's great. And again, I would say that is consistent with what I'm seeing with West Coast solar installers, is the ones that are being successful, they are diversifying. They're doing solar, they're doing batteries. In many cases, they're doing plumbing. They're going to upgrade your water heater. They're doing HVAC. They're going to upgrade your heat pump, or they're going to pull out your natural gas heat pump and upgrade you to electric. They're doing all of these things, roof repairs, roof replacements, and they're learning how to manage all these other different offerings as part of, solar being part of a larger portfolio. As California is sort of the trendsetter in terms of net metering policy and solar policy for the country, we see what's going on out there, the loss of net metering. I'd like to ask each of you, how would the loss of net metering affect your business, and how are you preparing for it?
I think it's coming. And like Hawaii and California are great examples of what is to come. Energy, PV plus storage is really the next phase of this industry. Add a battery, and it's going to start to make a lot more sense when net metering doesn't exist.
Yeah, storage is the obvious answer here. Also, being a New Yorker, I like to think that we also set trends. And I really hope that the East Coast will learn from the mistakes of the West Coast as well, would be the ideal situation, and to continue to prepare what we need for storage.
Well, I might have an unorthodox opinion, but I think the solar industry is massively over-subsidized and over-regulated. And that if we could get down to $1.50 a watt, well, net metering doesn't become nearly as important at that point, because everybody can afford it, and you're not relying on the whims of the utility. And so I think we need a concerted effort across the industry to reduce regulation, but also reduce the complexity of all the subsidies, so that we can get down to $1.50 a watt where anybody can afford it, and we're not so reliant on net metering.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, Joe. As somebody who's been in this space for now, again, going on 12, 13 years, I'm very excited that the technology is getting to a level of maturity, and the prices are coming down to a point where pretty much everybody could have solar and a home battery and pretty much take or leave the power company on your own terms, as opposed to what we have now, which is they dictate the terms and we pay the bill or they turn the lights off. And we don't have to live like that anymore. Frankly, the technology exists where we can, at a household level at least, we can be energy independent, only use the power company if and when you want to. So, well, at this point, this wraps up the questions that I had prepared for our panel discussion. Chris, I know you had some slides prepared that you'd like to share with the group. No? Okay, otherwise then what we can do is open up for a little bit of questions and answers while we still have time left.
Thanks. Interesting panel. Reuven Sussman, American Council for an Energy Efficient Economy. I recently have been doing work on comprehensive energy retrofits, and I hear you guys talking about diversifying what you provide, but in terms of solar and storage, what about energy efficiency, like having your crews be able to install insulation or know somebody who does that, HVAC and all that stuff, so you bring your load down before you install the solar. Is that something that you're thinking about?
Well, I'll say we partnered with a company in Northern Virginia called Homedics. I'll put out a plug for Homedics that does exactly what you're talking about. So we will trade folks between our two companies, people who have gone solar who want to add energy efficiency, or people who are starting with energy efficiency that want to go to solar. I think it can be extraordinarily difficult for one company to do all of it. I would love nothing more than to do everything from home energy audits all the way to heat pumps and beyond. But it's challenging because you need very specially trained folks to be able to do each one of those things. And it's hard enough just to add battery storage, let alone hot water or heat pumps. So I think they probably will stay separate sub-industries, and some folks will enter where they probably should, which is at energy efficiency, and move to solar. But some people will still start in solar, and I think it's incumbent on solar companies to have partners in HVAC, in energy efficiency, in insulation, so forth.
I would agree with that as well. Unfortunately, our company is just too spread thin to even fathom branching out into another industry. But I think energy efficiency, solar and storage go hand in hand and should be talked about in the same sentence, because my personal opinion is that we need a more efficient, we need to lower demand, like very quickly. That's going to be a huge issue from utility scale transmission to local consumption. And the way to do that is not to like slap a bunch of solar panels on your roof so you can consume more during the day to net meter. It's like to get that load down and be more efficient and responsible with what your house is consuming. So efficient upgrades are definitely a step one in doing that.
Yeah, in theory, what you're saying is absolutely right. We should be doing everything we can to conserve and reduce demand of the house before we start adding solar and storage to the solution. However, where I've seen this go bad in the past is where companies will, as part of their standard sales process, companies will sell an energy efficiency package along with solar. They'll promise the homeowner a certain amount of electric bill offset from the energy efficiency package, which in a lot of cases is just kind of very sloppily blown in insulation and things like that. So the homeowner thinks they're buying a 100% offset solution, and in many cases the production of that energy efficiency package just doesn't end up performing the way it was promised at the point of sale. So I think you can get yourself in trouble there if you do it the wrong way, but in theory you're absolutely right. Upgrade the water heater, upgrade the heat pump, do what you can to make that home as energy efficient as possible, and then cover the balance with solar PV. Nora, what's your take?
Yeah, I mean, for me, this is really on a personal level. I'm a renter. I live in Brooklyn in a big building, in a very old and inefficient building. I worked with the tenants collective to make sure that our building could have energy efficiency, as our landlord was forced to do renovations and upgrades. I found programs through the state, through NYSERDA, that's helping our landlord fund that. So it's out there. There's a lot of solar companies that I work with in New York, and I did prefer to go with an efficiency company to get the work done.
You had talked about lowering regulations. Can you just expand on that a little bit? Are you talking about National Electric Code installations or installation practices? What do you mean by reducing the regulations around solar?
Wow, where to begin? Well, I would begin with the permitting side. There are 18,000 AHJs in this country, and every single one of them has a different way of doing it. Nora seems to know about that. We've got, in DC, obviously, we've got 3 different states and 10 different counties and 5 different utilities. And we've got some counties where they don't have a permit process at all. It's same day, go build it. And then we've got other counties where you've got to show up at 3 p.m. on a Tuesday to City Hall with a stack of bills to get your permit. So standardizing the permitting process like they do in most other developed countries for solar is where I would start in terms of over-regulation, but just making the interconnection process easier. Standardizing the inspection process. Standardizing the time to PTO. I could go on and on and on. It is massively fractionalized and over-regulated, and it needs to change.
That's a great question, sir. And Joe, I think that's probably another reason why the companies that don't grow too fast are being successful, because it's a smaller handful of jurisdictions and utilities that they have to deal with, and they get used to the process of working with those known participants. Well, I think that wraps it up then. Folks, I really appreciate you participating on this panel discussion with us, and we thank you all for spending some time this afternoon.